She said, "Don't look at me like that," but her voice didn't match her words. That was the first thing that made me forget to breathe. We were standing too close in her kitchen, the soft hum of the refrigerator filling the silence between us. She was reaching for a glass, but her hand froze halfway, her eyes catching mine in the reflection of the window. Late evening light spilled through the curtains, painting her face in shades of amber and gold. There was something quiet about her, a stillness that felt deliberate, like she'd learned how to keep the world at a safe distance. She was 44, maybe 45. Confident, but not the kind that demanded attention. It came naturally, the way she moved, the way she spoke, even the way she sighed. I was 26, still pretending I had control over the things that made my pulse race. But the truth was simple: whenever she was near, control wasn't something I had anymore. I told myself it was harmless. That it was just curiosity, fascination, maybe admiration. But when her fingers brushed against mine that night, just a passing touch as she took the glass, it was enough to silence everything else in the room. She smiled then, soft and brief, as if she'd caught the thought behind my stillness. "You stare too much," she said, her tone teasing but edged with something unspoken. "Maybe I'm just listening," I murmured. She tilted her head, her lips curving into the kind of smile that makes time feel slower. "You don't listen with your eyes." I could have laughed, but I didn't. Neither did she. The air felt too heavy for that, or maybe too fragile. I watched her turn away, her hand brushing her hair back, the faint scent of her perfume mixing with coffee and rain from the open window. The storm had started outside, soft drops tapping against the glass, echoing the rhythm between us, too steady, too close. She leaned against the counter, crossing her arms. "You shouldn't," she began, but didn't finish. I took a small step forward, not enough to close the distance, but enough that she noticed. Her shoulders tensed, her breath caught, and for a moment, her eyes flickered toward my mouth before she looked away again. "Don't look at me like that," she whispered, the words barely audible, more plea than warning. But even as she said it, her hand moved to the edge of the counter between us. Slowly, deliberately, she reached across it, her fingers grazing my wrist, a light, questioning touch that felt like both surrender and defiance. "I wasn't looking for trouble," I said quietly. She smiled again, this time without trying to hide it. "No one ever is." The clock ticked behind us, the sound of rain growing louder. The tension wasn't sharp, it was slow, spreading like warmth under the skin. Her thumb traced an invisible line across the back of my hand before she pulled away, almost reluctantly. I thought she'd step back. Instead, she leaned in just enough for me to feel her breath on my neck, her voice a whisper that left no room to mistake her meaning. "Then stop standing so close." I could have. Maybe I should have. But I didn't. Her gaze met mine again, steady, searching, impossible to look away from. For a heartbeat, nothing existed except that space between us, the air, the pulse, the almost touch that burned louder than the rain outside. Then came the sound, a door creaking open from the hallway. She froze. Our eyes met, both of us caught mid-breath, mid-thought, mid-something we hadn't yet named. And in that moment, she whispered the same words again, softer this time, as if they meant something else entirely. "Don't look at me like that." To be continued. The door closed again. Whoever it was, they hadn't come in. But the sound lingered, an unfinished sentence hanging in the air. She turned away first, pretending to busy herself with the dishes, though her hands weren't steady. The glass slipped once, catching the light before she gripped it tighter. I watched her, the curve of her back tense under the soft fabric of her blouse. She didn't look at me, not even when she spoke. "You should go," she said. It wasn't sharp, it was tired. The kind of tone people use when they're fighting with themselves. "I will," I said. But I didn't move. Her silence filled the kitchen again. Rain still whispered against the window, and somewhere in that quiet, I noticed the smallest things, the faint scar near her wrist, the way she bit the inside of her cheek when she was thinking too much, the way her shoulders softened when she finally exhaled. It wasn't just attraction. It was recognition, of loneliness, of quiet evenings filled with nothing but the sound of your own thoughts. She finally spoke again, quieter now. People talk, you know. They always do. I didn't need to ask what she meant. I could hear the hesitation behind her words, the invisible wall she kept between us. You think I care what they say? She smiled, but it was the kind that hides more than it shows. You will. You're young. You still believe in clean beginnings. There it was, the reminder of the distance between us. 26 and 44. Different worlds pretending to share the same air. I leaned against the counter beside her, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her skin. Maybe I just believe in moments, I said. Like this one. Her head turned slightly. I could see her reflection in the dark window, the flicker of a smile she tried not to let show. You shouldn't say things like that. Why not? Because I might start believing them. The air thickened again, that dangerous stillness between words. I wanted to step closer, to bridge that half-inch of space where everything was waiting to happen. But she moved first, not away, just slightly, her hand brushing my sleeve as she reached for the coffee pot. The contact was brief, accidental, but it left heat behind. Her voice softened. You don't know what it's like to lose people, do you? I hesitated. I know enough. She looked at me then, really looked. No, you don't. You still think love fixes things. It doesn't. It just makes them harder to forget. There was something fragile in her voice, like a truth she hadn't said out loud before. I wanted to ask who she meant, but her eyes told me not to. So I didn't. I just stood there, close enough that her perfume, faint jasmine and rain, mixed with the scent of coffee and memory. Her hand was still near mine. I could feel the tremor when our fingers barely touched. Neither of us moved away this time. The storm outside broke harder, thunder rolling in the distance. She turned to face me again, her expression unreadable but soft, her voice barely above a whisper. You should really go, she said again, but her fingers stayed where they were, tracing the edge of my hand like she didn't mean it. And for a second, either of us did. It started with her laugh. Soft. Unplanned? Like she'd forgotten to guard herself for a second. I'd said something small, something about how the rain hadn't stopped since morning, and somehow that broke the distance between us. She stood by the kitchen counter, holding a half-filled cup, and the sound that left her lips made the room warmer than it should have been. When her eyes met mine, she realized it too. The silence that followed was heavier than words. Don't, she murmured, though I hadn't moved an inch. But I wanted to. Every part of me wanted to. Instead, I leaned against the opposite counter, watching the way her hand circled the mug, slow, distracted, her thumb brushing the rim like she was steadying herself. You shouldn't look at me like that, she said after a moment, trying to sound casual. Like what? Like I'm... She trailed off, looking down, her hair falling to hide her face. I stepped closer. Like you're what? She didn't answer. Her breath caught, quiet but not hidden. The rain outside softened, as if even the storm was listening. There was a vibration between us, that impossible, invisible pull that made every inch of space feel like an invitation. She turned slightly, our shoulders almost brushing. I could see the faint rise and fall of her chest, could feel the warmth radiating from her body. Then a knock. We both froze. Her hand slipped from the counter, brushing mine as she turned. The contact jolted through me, leaving sparks where skin met skin. The knock came again, firmer this time. She whispered, "Don't say a word." I didn't. I just watched as she smoothed her hair, trying to compose herself, that calm mask returning piece by piece. But her fingers trembled slightly when she opened the door. A neighbor. A woman about her age, smiling too brightly. They exchanged quick words, something about a package being left outside, something meaningless, but I saw the shift in her. How she straightened her posture, how her voice changed. And then the neighbor's gaze flicked past her, straight toward me. For a second, I thought she'd ask. But she didn't. Just a polite goodbye, a smile too long, and then the door closed again. Silence returned, sharper this time. She leaned against the door, eyes closed, exhaling slow. "That was close," she said under her breath. I almost laughed. "You're worried about what they'll think. You don't understand," she said, finally looking up at me. "They always think something." Her words hit something deeper. That fear of being seen, of being misread. I knew it wasn't just about the neighbor. It was about everything. I took a step forward, maybe two. The air between us shifted again. She didn't move this time. Her lips parted slightly, her eyes tracing mine like she was trying to memorize the reason not to give in. My hand rose without thinking, brushing a strand of hair from her face. The world held its breath. "Don't," she whispered again, but she didn't move away. My hand lingered near her cheek, close enough to feel the warmth of her breath. For a heartbeat, everything stilled, the rain, the air, the distance we kept pretending to maintain. Then she stepped back, barely, but enough. "You should go," she said softly, voice trembling in a way that betrayed her. I turned toward the door, but neither of us moved for several long seconds. And when I finally did, her fingers caught my wrist, gentle, hesitant, almost an apology. We didn't speak. We didn't have to. That was the moment we both knew. Walking away was already too late. The next evening, everything felt different, even the air between us. The rain had stopped, but the quiet it left behind was louder than before. She stood by the window, arms folded loosely, staring at the street lights flickering against the wet pavement. I could tell she hadn't meant for me to come by again, but she hadn't told me not to either. When she finally turned to face me, her expression was unreadable. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly. "I know. Then why are you?" I didn't answer right away. I couldn't. There was something in her tone, not anger, not fear, but something dangerously close to longing. I stepped closer, slowly, carefully. "Because I can't stop thinking about you." The words hung there, bare, unfiltered, too real. She looked down, a flicker of something crossing her face. "You think this is simple? That it's just about wanting?" "No," I said. "It's not simple. It never was." Her silence stretched out, heavy and fragile all at once. The lamplight caught her profile, the curve of her neck, the soft tremor in her jaw as she tried to compose herself. "People talk," she said finally, voice low. "They always have. I've already been the reason for someone else's mistake once. I can't." Her words broke, barely audible. I moved closer until I was just behind her, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from her back. "I don't care what they say," I whispered. She turned sharply, maybe to stop me, maybe to test if I'd mean it. But when her eyes met mine, something in her resolve cracked. "Don't," she said again, but her voice wasn't steady this time. I reached up, brushing a loose strand of hair from her cheek. My hand lingered, just for a second, maybe two. Her eyes closed as if the touch burned and soothed her all at once. "You make it hard to breathe," she whispered. "Then breathe with me," I said. Her laugh, soft, broken, disbelieving, escaped before she could stop it. She shook her head, but didn't move away. The room felt smaller now. The air heavier. Every heartbeat between us filled the silence like thunder. Her hand lifted, slowly, hesitantly, and rested on my chest. My pulse stuttered beneath her palm. "This can't happen," she said, barely above a whisper. "Then why are you shaking?" I asked. Her gaze lifted to mine. For a long moment, neither of us moved. It wasn't just attraction anymore, it was recognition. Like we'd both been pretending not to see what had always been there. She took a small step forward. I felt her breath against my throat, her fingers tightening against my shirt. "Tell me to stop," I said quietly. She didn't. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, her lips hovering inches from mine. "You don't know what you're asking for," she whispered. "Maybe I do." Our breaths mingled, one heartbeat, two, and then, just as the space between us was about to disappear, the sound of her phone shattered the silence. She froze. The screen lit up behind her on the counter, a name flashing that I didn't recognize. Her hand dropped from my chest. We stared at each other, half a step apart, everything burning and undone. Her voice broke the silence first, soft and trembling. "If you stay, nothing will ever be the same." And I knew she was right. Because neither of us wanted it to be, the next morning, everything between us felt quieter. Not distant, just suspended, like the world was holding its breath, waiting to see what we'd do next. She didn't answer my messages. I told myself it didn't matter, that maybe it was better this way, but by evening, I found myself outside her door again, same as before, pretending I had a reason. The light was on. I could see her shadow move across the curtain, slow, deliberate. I almost knocked. Almost. But then I heard her voice, not loud, not laughing, just speaking softly to someone. "I told you not to call me anymore," she said, and something in her tone made my chest tighten. A pause. Then a low, quiet reply. A man's voice. I shouldn't have listened, but I couldn't walk away. "I can't keep pretending I'm fine," she said, voice breaking. "You left, remember? You don't get to want me now." And then silence. The door opened. She froze when she saw me there, still, caught halfway between guilt and surprise. "How much did you hear?" she asked. "Enough," I said. The air between us changed, charged, brittle. "That was my ex-husband," she said after a moment, eyes avoiding mine. "He thinks coming back will fix what he broke. And will it?" She laughed, but it didn't sound amused. "You think I'd still be standing here if it could?" I stepped inside before she could protest. The scent of coffee and rain filled the room. She looked tired, not from sleeplessness, but from holding too much inside. "You lied," I said quietly. Her eyes flashed up to mine. "About what?" "You said this couldn't happen because of me. Because of what people might think. But that's not it, is it? You're scared he'll find out." Her silence was an answer. I took a step closer, my voice low. "You're protecting the wrong person." Her breath caught, a small, sharp sound. "You don't understand. Then help me." Her hand lifted slightly, like she wanted to touch me, or maybe push me away, but stopped halfway. "It's not that simple," she said, her voice trembling now. "It could be." She shook her head, stepping back, but I followed, not out of boldness, but something deeper, something I couldn't contain anymore. "Every time I try to forget," I said, "I see you again. And it starts all over." Her eyes softened, a flicker of something raw passing through them. "You shouldn't say things like that." "Then stop looking at me like that," I said. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She turned away, pressing a hand against the counter, grounding herself, maybe. "I can't be what you want," she whispered. I moved closer, my words almost against her hair. "What if I already decided you are?" She turned, suddenly, sharply, our faces inches apart again. For a heartbeat, either of us moved. Her hand trembled at her side, mine clenched to keep from reaching out. Then she exhaled, eyes glistening. "If we do this," she said, "it won't just ruin him. It'll ruin me too." I swallowed hard. Then maybe it's time something finally broke. The silence that followed wasn't quiet, it was alive, humming with something we couldn't take back. And she didn't stop me this time when I stepped closer. The rain hadn't stopped since that night, it just shifted from a drizzle to something heavier, like the sky couldn't decide whether to hold back or pour everything out. She stood by the window, her reflection blurring against the glass. I could see the faint tremor in her shoulders, the way she was trying not to turn around. "You should go," she said softly. I didn't. I couldn't. "I will," I replied, though either of us believed it. Her voice was quiet, but every word landed like a touch. "You keep saying that. I keep meaning it." She finally turned, eyes dark and unreadable. The space between us, it wasn't much. A few steps, maybe? A breath. "This isn't fair," she whispered. I know. Her gaze fell to my hand, the one clenched by my side, useless, aching. Then why are you still here? Because every time I try to walk away, I said, you do something that makes it impossible. Her laugh was soft, bitter, and full of something that sounded like surrender. Like what? Like breathe. She looked at me for a long moment, really looked. Her lips parted as if to answer, but instead she closed the distance between us, slow enough for me to stop her, fast enough to make it impossible. I felt the warmth of her hand first, brushing against my sleeve, hesitant, trembling. Then her voice, a whisper against my chest. You don't know what this means for me. I do, I said. That's why it matters. Her fingers tightened. You'll regret it. Maybe, I said. But not tonight. The room felt smaller now, heavy with rain, heartbeat, breath. Her perfume lingered in the air, faint and familiar, like something I'd been chasing for years. I told myself it was just a mistake, she said, eyes glistening. That you were just curious. I stepped closer. And what did you tell yourself after that? That I was too old to believe in moments like this. She said it like a confession, like something she needed to release. I reached out, not to pull her closer, just to touch her hand. It was enough. I never cared about the number, I whispered. I cared about you. Her breath hitched, a soft, broken sound. You shouldn't say that. Then stop listening. Her eyes fluttered shut, her forehead resting lightly against mine. The silence between us wasn't empty anymore. It was full of everything we hadn't said, everything we couldn't. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. If we cross this line, there's no going back. Then let's not. She pulled back just slightly, her thumb brushing against my jaw, eyes searching mine like she was trying to memorize something. And then, she smiled, small and sad. You always make it sound so simple. It is, I said. It's just us. She didn't answer, not with words. Just that look. That quiet, resigned look that said she finally understood. The rain outside softened. Her hand lingered in mine. We didn't need to say anything else. We both knew, whatever came next, it was already too late to turn away. Morning light spilled through the curtains, soft and golden, touching everything it could reach, her hair, the quiet space between us, the half-empty cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. We hadn't moved much since the rain stopped. The silence was comfortable now, like it finally understood us. She sat cross-legged on the couch, one hand tracing the rim of her mug, eyes distant but calm. The kind of calm that comes after a storm, when everything's been said, or felt, enough times to no longer need words. I watched her. Not like before, not with hesitation or hunger, but with something gentler. Something that didn't need to be hidden. You're staring again, she said, faint smile tugging at her lips. Can't help it. She shook her head, but didn't look away. You should have been born 10 years earlier. Then I wouldn't have met you, I said. She laughed, quiet but real. You always have an answer, don't you? Only when it's about you. The light shifted as clouds drifted past the window. Dust floated in the air, lazy and golden. I reached out, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face, something I'd done 100 times in my head before. This time, I didn't stop halfway. Her eyes softened. You still think this makes sense? No, I said. But it feels right. She looked down at our hands, mine resting on hers, and let out a slow breath. I spent so long convincing myself I didn't need anyone. That wanting something like this was foolish. And now? Her thumb moved, just slightly, tracing the edge of my fingers. Now I'm just tired of pretending it doesn't matter. There wasn't a grand confession, no perfect line to end everything neatly. Just two people finally sitting in the same truth. I leaned back, letting my shoulder brush hers. She didn't move away. I don't know what happens after this, she said quietly. Neither do I admitted. But maybe that's okay. The city outside was waking up, faint hum of traffic, birds somewhere in the distance. The world felt bigger again, but not in a way that pushed us apart. She turned her head, her temple resting lightly against mine. "You're too young to mean that." "Maybe," I said, "but I mean it anyway." A pause, then she smiled, the kind of smile that reached her eyes. Her hand found mine again, fingers slipping together, slow and sure. We sat there like that, no words, no fear left between us. Just the quiet rhythm of breathing in sync, the warmth of skin against skin, the kind of stillness that only comes when something has finally settled where it belongs. I kissed her forehead, not asking, not needing to. Just letting it be what it was, an ending that didn't need fixing. The clock ticked. The light moved. The world kept going. And for the first time, either of us felt behind.